Hi guys, good morning. Today I'm in Paris, but we're not going to be touring the Eiffel Tower or visiting the Louvre or anything like that. Today we are here to check this out. Now I'm at the back entrance of the Paris Motor Show, which alternates every year with the Frankfurt Motor Show, and this year we're going to see quite a lot of things going on from the French automaker, so I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm going to take you along for the ride. So let's go. Alright, I'm now in Hall 1, and this is where all the French manufacturers are. Renault, Citroen, Peugeot, the DS brand. And one of the things that I'm particularly looking forward to is right in front of me, and it's attracted quite a great deal of interest. This thing is low, it's wide, and it's pretty slick. Here it is. This is the Renault Trezor concept. Now the Z in the name stands for zero emissions. Renault's been playing with this for a while now with the Zoe and so forth. But this is a GT, two-seat GT concept, and it's claimed to preview the future design direction, the next phase, I should say, of the Renault brand. What's really interesting here is the emotion showing through into the various design elements. This like beaten panel, these really sweet headlamps. Check out how the cabin opens. That provides access to the cabin. The entire top half of this car lifts up. Now, there is no door. We basically step over this side into the cabin, and it's really low, so you shouldn't have a very big problem doing that. Whether or not you can do that elegantly is, waits to be seen. However, it's a really cool concept, and it avoids putting a large number of shut lines onto the car. That is technology, or at least that's what they're trying to tout. If I'm honest, the only appealing thing about this entire Audi stand is the light show that you see here behind me. The cars themselves, S5, A5, Sportback, and the Q5, I'm not entirely convinced, and yeah, we'll leave it at that. So one of my favorite details here is in the first square of these air bumps. It looks like a light, and it isn't. It actually is just a colored square, which is also repeated in the wing mirror and also on the roof of the car. And this just adds a little added dimension, really, to design from a consistency perspective, and it also continues. Now, these little cars really have quite a strong presence, and it's really thanks to the colorways. And this car looks great in a lot of different colors. This white and red and black is very nice. Definitely has a leg up on the competition in terms of what it offers from a visual dynamic perspective, but also it looks good in other colors, and that's really what's crucial. And all of these design elements are really quite forward-looking as well, like the lamps, very technical, and the front as well as the rear. Now from the rear, again, we can see a very close family resemblance. There's no denying that this is a Citroen product, and it's quite recognizable, which is great. So I love the consistency of the design. I love the various details. I love how it's rugged, slightly aggressive from the front end, but also quite friendly and playful. And for a car in this class, I think that's what's needed. From an interior perspective, the C3 is also really well resolved. Again, with the contrasting colorways of the interior, it is not a premium product, nor is it trying to be, but it has a lot in terms of technology and in terms of really a kind of an emotional take on a small, compact vehicle that is going to be primarily used in urban areas, but it has this lovely IP and this massive center screen, which is a freestanding screen, very minimal amount of buttons because everything is touchscreen here. You've got a few buttons on the steering wheel, a few controls here. Obviously a stick shift. This is Europe, and it's overall quite a successful package from an interior perspective. Also, again, with the patterns repeated from the exterior onto the interior, very consistent, very clean, and very nice design. And that's why the C3 gets my vote for the best production design here at the show. So here behind me we have the Infiniti QX Sport Inspiration concept. Now that was originally launched in Beijing, but there's a new color and various trim and updates that you can see on this car, which is a very different take, shall we say, on what it is that we saw initially. Infiniti's been producing a whole lot of concepts. Unfortunately, a lot of what we've seen has not really translated into production. The QX Sport behind me, we'll see whether or not that makes it into production. The Q30 or the QX30, ultimately that was not the production car. And it was a great concept. I really loved various elements of that car, but this hopefully will translate a bit more into what Infiniti's got in store as far as production. The rear end here is really very nicely done. We've got this bump on this, gives it that little bit more pronounced element to the branding. Also underneath we've got these massive chrome elements that encompass the tailpipes or the exhaust outlets, which it doesn't really need, but it's a nice aesthetic element and gives it that robust quality. And the wheels are also a very appealing element of this car. Infiniti does wheels particularly well. This is no exception. The detailing on these is really very cool, and the colorways as well. And massive tires here. 22s is what these wheels are. Infiniti on the side has toned down this shoulder line that's really quite pronounced on other models. On this car, even albeit in concept form, it's still present, obviously. It's one of the defining elements of the brand, but it's very toned down as opposed to others. It doesn't quite jut out as far, and it's really more restrained than what we've seen Infiniti come out with in the past. And in my opinion, therefore, it's more refined. So this behind me is the new Discovery. It's not too far off of the concept that was unveiled at the New York show in 2014. It's pretty much identical. There is very little that's changed in the transition to production, which you can see. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Land Rover is really pushing forward with this new design language that we've seen on the smaller Discovery range. Now the Discovery 5 is really taking that and moving the brand into modern times, and that's a good thing, especially when you look at the interior. This is really taking things a step forward, and that's really what necessarily needs to happen for the brand to remain relevant. Now, whether or not people that have bought this product in the past are going to really it's going to appeal to them, that's a different kettle of fish. However, from looking at it, it's not bad. It's a good design, but it's lost a certain character and appeal that I believe the former model had. So anyway, moving forward, this thing is entirely more practical. Yes, it's a bit longer, and it also has a very comfortable interior space with room for 7 adults. And the other one really, it was kind of like that. However, it kind of failed a little bit in the rearmost seat area, whereas this is providing more comfort, more room, more versatility. So we'll see how people that actually buy this product believe it has fared, and we'll just have to see how that reception is. Here we have the Mercedes EQ concept, which is a future take on Mercedes SUV, trying to appeal to the next generation of consumers, obviously. Massive amounts of technology, very expressive design, even though it still maintains the central purity design philosophy that the brand has been pushing forward. This is a concept car, obviously, with various different elements to communicate that electric design, and therefore a lot of blue, a lot of lighting, a lot of very electric style elements that are communicated through the exterior design. Inside, there's a lot of embedded technology, and that's really through the screen that this HMI is presented. They are really pushing the envelope with these screens in Mercedes products currently, and this is no different. This actually brings an even larger screen across the entire IP, which is really quite imposing, and if I do say so, not all that well integrated. I mean, there's better applications of a screen that I've seen which can be actually done now, especially for a premium product, where a car that, such as this, could have some rounded elements, some curved screens put in, which would actually add significantly to the overall design and bring it out even more so in a vehicle like this. So why Mercedes has chosen not to implement that, instead going for these massive but flat, very, very flat screens, is not something that I'm privy to. I don't know that information. I'm sure there's a reason behind it. Maybe it's the usability factor, but it's definitely not, from an aesthetic perspective, and also from a perceived quality perspective, as well integrated as it could be. And they could stand to make some advances in that area. So Toyota is not the only one producing eccentric concepts, really, to get some sort of reaction out of the public. And Mitsubishi's been showing a number of concepts with some really polarizing design in the past few years. And they do well to put one of these things into production, I think. Obviously, this is very different from what we're used to seeing, quite expressive. I mean, look at the front face on this thing. This EX concept, as it's called, is a pure electric SUV concept, which is really the way forward for the auto industry in terms of propulsion. But we're also looking at something that's quite unique in terms of, being quite polarizing, again, in its design and eccentric. And Toyota's really managed to do quite well with this, so why not Mitsubishi as well? We'll see. So obviously this is the Vision Mercedes-Maybach 6 concept, and this car was unveiled in Pebble Beach. It's now made an appearance here in Paris, and if you haven't seen my video on this car, moving and driving in the natural light, it was dusk, so there was a lot less natural light, but there was a lot more than there is here in Paris. Now you can actually see, because it's spinning around, how the light plays on these surfaces, and it's really quite soft and sensual in the way that all of these come together, and the reflections on these surfaces, particularly in the daylight, is something really very nice, and something really that Mercedes and Maybach's design team here in Southern California really pulled off very well. Well, here we are at the Volkswagen stand. This is the ID concept that was just unveiled. As expected, it's a bit manic over here. Check this thing out. Lots of interesting design details on this car. Obviously, it's a concept. There are lots of elements that we won't see in production, but the good thing about this is that it is actually going into production. A vehicle this size, all electric, Golf, will be going into production in the near future. Not so near, but it has been announced that we'll be seeing this. Now, this is a i3 competitor, if I've ever seen one. I mean, look at the black detailing, and that is really a signifier of future mobility, is communicated in this kind of design aesthetic. Now, the interior is really quite impressive. I mean, just look at that steering wheel, how it's folded into the IP, and that IP is so simple. Everything is integrated right there in the front, even the steering wheel controls, or the drive controls in the steering wheel, and that is really brilliant stuff.